you will own nothing and be happy about it. Have you heard that saying before? You will own nothing and be happy about it. It's some sort of dystopian idea of the future where everything you kind of quote unquote own is actually rented, meaning you rent your house, you rent your car, you rent your cell phone, you rent your, fill in the blank here, and there's no real property that you own. Everything is rented. Well, I was thinking more about this and I thought, boy, I own the car, but if I decide to not pay my tabs, then can't the government decide to come and take my car? And I own the home, but if I decide to stop paying the taxes on my house, then couldn't the government just take it? And this can go down the line of, well, I own my fill in the blank here, but if you don't pay some sort of usury fee or tax or some sort of government program, well, you're not going to own it much longer. Well, the further down this rabbit hole you go, you start to wander into the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Let's take a quick look and see what that says. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, you can see it here. We're going to focus on the bottom part where it says, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." Well, if I'm reading into that, of course I'm not a lawyer, it sounds as if it's okay for the government to take your property as long as they pay you for it. But doesn't that go against the idea of property rights a little bit? So the Fifth Amendment here has a few different areas when it comes to what it covers. The right to remain silent, double jeopardy, just compensation, due process, and grand jury indictment. But again, we're going to take a look here at this just compensation piece. The Fifth Amendment is supposed to protect citizens from having their private property taken for public use, but without just compensation. That's the part that bugs me. If they had left that part out and says, nope, government can't take private property, I would say, that sounds great. But the added part of without paying you for it, boy, when the government can just print a bunch of money, I mean, in theory, couldn't they just print a bunch of money and then buy whatever they wanted to? I'm going to take a quick second to ask you for a bit of a favor here. On YouTube, the best currency is considered the like button and the subscribe button. So if you're enjoying this content so far, we just ask that you hit the like button for me. It's the only form of payment that I'm getting right now for this channel. And subscribe if you want to hear more and follow along in this journey learning about Bitcoin and overall property rights. Thank you so much. Now back to the program. Now again, I'm no attorney, so let's take a quick look here over at Cornell Law School and see what they have to say about eminent domain. Eminent domain refers to the power of the government to take private property and convert it into quote-unquote public use, referred to as a taking. The Fifth Amendment provides that the government may only exercise this power if they provide just compensation to the property owners. They go through a handful of different cases here, which we'll follow up with in the future. But when you think about it, Rocket Mortgage even says the purpose of eminent domain is to give the government the power to launch projects that'll benefit an entire community. And this public use outweighs private property rights. Homeowners and property owners, though, are entitled to just compensation when the government wants to take their land. And lastly here, from Savages and Scoundrels, they say that eminent domain is a legal tool used by the state to confiscate or condemn privately owned land, and it has its origins as a law from the Middle Ages. So I go back to this idea that you'll own nothing and be happy, but we're not quite there, as some of these post-apocalyptic folks may say, but it's written into the law that they could very well just buy you out of whatever they want to own, and then you would own nothing. So is this a tool to be used to eventually come to that ultimate end, that people will just be bought out of their private property as just compensation to eventually rented back from the government? I don't know. It's a kind of deep moral, ethical controversial idea, I guess. If you like the idea of property rights, you probably aren't a big fan of this idea. And if you're not a big fan of property rights, then it probably doesn't matter too much to you. And so I had to dive a bit deeper to think, well, where in the US anyway could you be safe from the government coming in and buying you out? Now, of course, the Fifth Amendment is on the federal, but there are some states that have laws against eminent domain, as you can see here from another law office. There are 12 states that are considered free states. Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin have enacted legislation to prohibit the use of eminent domain for economic development. You know, as we gear up for the election here within the week, I look at some of the regulations and policies both sides have, and the biggest issue I have with some of these ideas really comes down to this idea of property rights. When you have a society that upholds and protects individuals' right to own property, regardless of what that property might be, I would argue that is a stronger and more cohesive society. When you have another society that does not value and does not protect property rights, either from the state or from the neighbor, well, then culture and society, everything will break down over time if you don't have that protection to the stuff that you think you own. Even little kids have an understanding of ownership. Hey, that's mine. Hey, that's mine. But I guess the parents are the ones that come in and say, I'm going to use eminent domain because this toy is actually mine. But it's odd that the idea of property rights is somehow ingrained in all of us because even children have this idea of ownership of their stuff. And yet, as adults, we may forget that ownership of property is a very important, I would argue, fundamental right that you need to have for a cohesive society. This is just something I've been struggling with here recently, but I would love to know your thoughts about this eminent domain, government seizure of property, all within the Fifth Amendment, and really there as the guise for the public use or the public good. And if you stick around all the way to the end here, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. And let me know what else you'd like to hear about and learn about on the channel, because I do want this to be more engaging. I want you as the audience to understand and hear more when it comes to Bitcoin in particular, but property rights by and large. So let me know some ideas of things you'd like to learn or hear about on the channel. Thank you so much for listening to the rant or the ideas. We're going to go down this rabbit hole more. If you made it this far, please hit the like button below. That's the best currency here on YouTube. Hit the like button below. Subscribe if you want to see more content I put out. And hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I upload content. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.